Hey, welcome back to another video. I'm Ivan Calderon, and today we're going to be looking at the brand new Ozone 9 by Izotope. So Izotope just released their latest version of Ozone, which, if you're unfamiliar, is a mastering suite, sort of like a one-stop shop for all of your mastering needs. Now, I've been using Ozone for quite a few years now. I think my first version was version 6. I've been rocking version 8 for the past 2 years or so, but recently the good people over at Plugin Boutique asked me if I wanted to try out their latest version, version 9, and of course I said yes, so a huge shout out to them. So then today we will be looking at what's new in version 9 of Ozone and whether or not you should upgrade. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So diving straight into the plugin, aesthetically, nothing drastic has changed because it still carries over that same modern look from version 8. Now I do want to point out real quick that for the sake of this video, I will only be focusing on the new additions, the new features. If you want more of a walkthrough of the plugin itself, then I definitely recommend you check out my review of version 8 because a lot of the core elements do carry over, so I'm going to link that video up top here. But alright, as far as improvements go, the first thing that I noticed was that the dynamic EQ and the match EQ are now their own separate modules. Before, they used to be bundled together with the EQ and presented at the bottom as a section, but like I said, now they are their own separate units, which I actually quite like. Moving on, the next biggest change, and probably the biggest change in this entire update, I would say, are the additions of their brand new Master Rebalance and Low-End Focus modules, which I am actually really excited about, so let's go ahead and take a look. Starting out with the brand new Master Rebalance module, this one is hands down my favorite out of the new bunch, and it essentially uses machine learning to allow you to adjust the gain on the vocal, bass, and drum elements of a song without having access to the trackouts. Now this obviously can be very handy for mastering engineers, but I also see this being very useful for a mixing engineer, specifically the ones who work in rap and the ones that deal with 2-track mixes where the beat usually comes in as a pre-mixed MP3 or WAV file and you have to mold the vocals around it. But alright, to demonstrate, I have a track pulled up, one that I worked on with an artist. The track is titled For a Moment in Time by The Next Day, and I'll be using it for the remainder of this video to demonstrate some of these modules. So let's go ahead and pull up the Master Rebalance one and let's take a listen.
Tell me that I'm not enough. Tell me that I'm just nothing. Tell me that I'm not enough. Tell me that I'm just nothing. Tell me that I'm not enough.
So as we can see, I only have the mixed file. I have the single mixed file. I don't have the trackouts, but I was able to individually adjust the gain of the vocals, bass, and drums. I'm not quite sure how this works, but it is absolutely amazing. Now, my only gripe with this module is that it seems you can't adjust the gain of each section, the vocals, bass, and drums, individually. For example, if I go over to the vocal section and increase the gain by, say, 3 dB, and then I switch over to the bass section, you'll notice that the slider has also increased here by 3 dB. Now this does not mean that everything is being affected at once because you still have to click over to activate each section, but what it does mean is that you cannot individually adjust each section with different values of the gain because the slider seems to be linked. Now this kind of sucks because if you wanted to adjust the gain values of the vocals and the bass, for example, and set them differently, you couldn't really do that with one instance of the module. Now when I first came across this obstacle, the first thing that I thought about was, well, I'll just add in another instance of the module within Ozone, but it turns out that you cannot also add in 2 instances of the same module within one instance of Ozone. The only workaround that I found for this was to bring in another instance of the Master Rebalance module, but as a separate plugin, and then drop that into your chain. But at that point, you're also using more CPU power. Now, I'm not quite sure why Izotope would cripple such an amazing feature like this, and maybe I'm just doing it wrong, and if that's the case, then definitely let me know in the comments below. But I think overall, for what it does, this feature is absolutely amazing. Moving on, the next new module is the Low-End Focus. Now, the first thing you'll notice with this module is that we have a frequency selector at the top, and by default, it will be set to a range from 20 to 300 Hertz, but you could always go in here and select smaller portions of that range range to work on specific elements. At the bottom, you'll see two different modes for punchy and smooth, two different sliders for contrast and gain, and then one button for listening. Now the modes basically allow you to switch from punchy to smooth, and the difference is that the punchy mode focuses more on the transients, which could be really good if you're working on something like kicks, and the smooth mode allows you to focus on the sustained material or the tail, which could be really useful for something like basses or 808s. As far as the slider goes, the gain is very straightforward. You're basically just adding or reducing gain to whatever section you are working on. The contrast, on the other hand, seems to allow you to adjust the contrast between the low end and the high end frequencies. So basically, the higher you go, the more focused it will be on the low end, and the lower you go, the more bleed you will get from high end frequencies. Finally, the listen button allows you to solo the section you are working on with any parameters that you have set, so you can hear the exact changes you are making. So let's go ahead and play a quick demo. I'm going to play that same part of the song, and then we'll mess around with some of these parameters.
Tell me that I'm not enough. Tell me that I'm just nothing. Tell me that I'm not enough. Tell me that I'm just nothing. Tell me that I'm not enough. Tell me that I'm not enough. Tell me that I'm just nothing. Tell me that I'm not. Tell me that I'm not.
So as you can see, this can be very, very useful for adding that low end punch or more body to your basses in 808 to a song that's already pre-mixed or mastered. Really, really useful. My only gripe with this module is the same as with the master rebalance, because it seems that here again, we cannot set individual values for the parameters within each mode. But I think, again, overall, for what it does, it is another really, really great feature. Finally, the last new big thing that I noticed was the improved Master Assistant. Now, the Master Assistant was probably my favorite new feature from version 8, and it seems that it just keeps getting better. Now, when you open it up here, you'll notice that you have a few more options, including the new vintage mode, which I believe means that they're going to be running the audio through like vintage hardware emulations, which means that you'll probably get some of that warmth and texture that you would get with hardware gear. So let's go ahead and do a quick demo. I'm going to set my settings here real quick. Let's do modern, intensity, and streaming. All this is fine. Now, it does recommend that you use it on the loudest section of your song. So let me just look for the hook. Okay, here we go.
I thought you'd be mine. I thought you'd be mine, but you'd rather be with someone else.
So right off the bat, I think what it did sounds amazing. If anything, I would just do minor tweaks, but it sounds really, really good, at least to me. Now, taking a look at what it did individually, it brought in an equalizer and did this. Nothing on the dynamics on the compression. It turned that off. It brought in a dynamic EQ and did a couple dips on certain frequencies, and then of course a limiter, and it looks like it raised the volume to -14 LUFS. Now, I would probably still run this through something like loudness penalty, as I mentioned in a different video, just to make sure that it sounds good on all streaming platforms, but again, for what it did, I think it sounds really, really good. Now, before I give my final thoughts on Ozone 9, I do want to point out that I went over what I consider to be some of the biggest changes and additions to this version. Now, of course, there are a bunch of little tidbits here and there, and for full transparency, I'm going to pull up their site so you guys can see exactly all the details of what's new, and I definitely recommend that you guys visit the site to see this in detail for yourself and maybe even try the plugin out if you haven't already. But just giving it a quick scroll, there's a bunch of little things here and there. So again, I definitely recommend you go and visit the site and check this out for yourself. Now, as far as recommendations go, if you are a beat maker and you're just looking to create mastered versions or showcase versions of your beat to put up on your beat store or streaming platforms, and you already have version 8, I would say skip this, because all you really need for that are the basic modules that come with the previous versions, specifically version 8, and the master assistant. That is, I would say, the only thing you really need. If you don't own version 8 or any version of Ozone, then I would say definitely get Ozone 9, but get the Essentials version. You don't need anything else past that, because again, all you need is that mastering assistant to kind of give you that help to create the loud version or mastered version of your beat. If you're a mixing or mastering engineer, then 100% Ozone 9 is a worthy upgrade, but the only thing that I'll say, and I realize that not a lot of people are going to be able to maybe do this because it is a higher price point, but if you're going to upgrade, go for the advanced version, because all the cool new features are only available on the advanced version. So I would say definitely consider going to that if you're going to upgrade. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Now, I will be leaving all versions of Ozone down below in the description for your convenience in case you are interested. And along with that, at the moment, Plugin Boutique is currently running a promotion where if you buy anything off their site, you do get 3 free sample packs from LoopCloud for free, all up until October 31st. So if you buy anything all this month, you get 3 sample packs for free from LoopCloud. But again, thank you so much for watching. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you're not already, but I will see you on the next one.